Kristen and Charity of the Harmony House are joining us. Of course, the Harmony House is a domestic violence resource and shelter here in Greene County. We are talking about, well, you guys had said that you have started to see a rise in misogyny and misogynistic rhetoric. What are you guys observing from the shelter?
So I think one of the things that we both noticed is the rise in people posting and commenting really harmful things against women. So I'm sure we've probably all seen or heard the "Your Body, My Choice."
Ugh,
That has now
yes.
trickled down to even school-aged kids.
Wait,
So
school age kids are telling, like the little
yes, so
boys
like
are telling the
boys,
little
I mean,
girls, your
even at the
body, my
elementary level,
choice.
yes, at the elementary level, boys are telling girls, "Your body, my choice." Now, I don't think at that age they don't really know what that means, but they're picking it up from somewhere. And so I think it's really helpful for us all to be aware of that and really push back um, against that when we hear it with among our friends, if your kids come home repeating that, and make sure that we are pushing a really healthy, um, woman, female friendly verbiage on that.
Right, because so many times we hear stories of women where they're talking about how they just in general don't ever feel safe. And it's like, I'm walking through the parking lot and I've got my car keys between my fingers, or, they're taking extra steps that like most people, men, wouldn't even think about, right? Because we're just constantly head on a swivel, super hyper vigilant. And then you have this "your body, my choice" rhetoric happening. And then it's like, who do I know and maybe in my life that believes this, and like what harm can come? So it like intensifies the hypervigilance that we already have to have, because it's like, are these just words? Is someone actually going to act on this? Is it someone I know, a stranger? Like, it feels like a war on women at this point.
I was going to ask, because you'll hear people say like, "Oh, it's just words, but it's not just words, because I think if I've learned anything, it's that verbal leads to physical at some point.
Mm-hmm.
Is that kind of what you guys are indicating? Why we need to shut it down now while it's still kind of in this verbal phase?
Yes, absolutely. That's really where it starts. It's those harmful comments that we write off as saying, "Oh, that's just a joke," but really, what it's doing is dehumanizing an entire demographic. It's dehumanizing women, and once you have done that, then it's much easier to start taking advantage, to try and get them into an abusive situation, to want to commit harm against them. So I feel like that really is the beginning of that slippery slope.
Right. And then that just becomes kind of like the rule. And then women are objects. And then when we look at it from like the power dynamic, like in the workplace or in relationships where the man already has power in the dynamic. And then if this is their thought process or their belief, then they're just going to be like, I mean, I can do whatever and it doesn't matter.
Mm-hmm. You guys have a podcast. What is the name of the podcast, and how can people write in before we go to break?
Okay, podcast is Voices Against Violence, and we have an email address. It's podcast@myharmonyhouse.org. So if anyone wants to write in suggestions or thoughts or ideas for topics, we welcome any and all feedback.
We listen and we don't judge. It is a trend taking social media sort of by storm. Kristen and Charity are here with the Harmony House, which of course is a domestic violence resource shelter and center here in Greene County. I have heard some what the questions on this trend, and you guys actually brought it up as a topic that you wanted to discuss today. So what made you pop your eyebrows? Why did you want to talk about it?
Well, I saw it, and I think on the surface you think, okay, this is healthy. We're sharing and we're listening and we're not judging, but really that is not, if you leave it there, that is not what healthy communication looks like.
Right. It's like couples are using it. One of the partners in a relationship is using it to share some very wild, harmful things. Like it might be like, "Oh, I thought you were ugly when we first started dating," or "We're having sex and I'm dreaming about other people," or other things that it's just like, that maybe isn't for public consumption. Like
Yeah.
maybe we need to step back and have some private, honest.
My thing is like your partner might be judging, but I am as a watcher, like as a viewer, I am judging you so hard. What are you confessing to the internet right now?
Yes, it almost seems like gaslighting, the videos that I watch. Like here, I'm going to say, oh, remember that thing? I lied to you, but you can't react because we're not going to judge.
Yeah, remember, we're not judging.
Yeah.
So that's not healthy. Now, if you start there, like, hey, let's have an open and honest conversation. And hey, I did this a while back. I never told you about it. I'm really sorry. Here's what I'm going to do going forward. Or what can I, that would be a healthy way. But it just seems, if people are watching that thinking, okay, this is a good way to have this conversation with my partner, and that's all you do, that I think that in the end, that's going to cause more harm than good.
Yeah. And we see this so often with all kinds of different social media trends where those trends normalize harmful behavior. So then people who are just entering dating relationships or just starting to date in general, like they're seeing these things and they're like, oh, so like that's what a relationship looks like. And also, in domestic violence, we talk about generational cycles of abuse, if that's what you grew up with, and now you're seeing it on social media. And it's just like really highlighting like, this is normal, this is what we do. And so like we've talked about so many times, that is why it is so important to get education around the issue and learn those healthy and unhealthy behaviors so that you can have an equitable, healthy relationship.
Speaking of listening, the Harmony House has a podcast. It is called What? How can people listen?
It's Voices Against Violence. You find it on all the platforms where you get your podcasts.
And we have an email address. It's podcast@myharmonyhouse.org. People can write in topic ideas, suggestions, thoughts, things that they want to talk about. We're open to any and all suggestions that folks have.
The podcast is called Voices Against Violence. We have Kirsten and Charity here with us. People have been getting in contact with you since they've started to listen to this podcast. You guys, of course, with the Harmony House, a domestic violence resource and shelter here in Greene County. The email, podcast@myharmonyhouse.org. Y'all confess that something that people were telling you that they wish that would be talked about, and you guys have talked about on your podcast, is what people wish they knew when they were younger. So what are some topics that have emerged from that podcast for you on that?
So one of the themes that came out of that, things that people wish they knew about relationships, was that they don't have to hurt, and variations on that. Like love it doesn't have to hurt, and it shouldn't hurt.
Right. And relationships, it's okay to go slow. We talk about relationships that move fast, often red flags. So like, it's okay to take your time to get to know someone. And if the person that you're in a relationship with is pushing back on that and wanting to move faster, then, that's a good time to kind of step back from that relationship in general. And,
what does moving faster mean? What does that mean? Like rushing into physical things, or?
Yeah, it can be rushing into physical things. It can be like, we've been together for a month, but I'm so infatuated with you, we definitely need to move in together. Or it's getting engaged and married really fast. Some of those things that, in most relationships, they take a little bit of time, but it's just like all of these big things are happening very quickly. And typically what we see in that is that one of the partners has the power in that relationship, in that dynamic. And so then the other partner is losing a little bit of that autonomy and that ability to say, like, I'm not comfortable with this. Their boundaries are being violated. They just don't have a say in what's happening most of the time.
Okay, again, guys, the podcast is called Voices Against Violence, and you can reach out to the Harmony House at podcast@myharmonyhouse.org if you've got questions or you have topic suggestions. Okay, we are talking about domestic violence, as we do with the Harmony House. The Harmony House, of course, a domestic violence shelter and resource for folks here in Greene County. Kristen and Charity joining us. Thank you for being here.
Thank you.
I have been listening to a podcast that was suggested to me that Anna Kendrick did with Dax Shepard. I think his podcast is called like Armchair Expert or whatever. But she's talking about this abusive relationship that she was in, and she had started to go to therapy, and she was begging her therapist, like, give me some sort of mental health diagnosis so I know that I was the problem and I can fix this. But there really wasn't one to give her. She wasn't bipolar. She didn't have PMDD. She wasn't a narcissist. She was in an abusive relationship. So let's talk about the dynamics that therapy plays when it comes to the domestic violence perspective.
Well, one of the things that can happen there is that if that therapist is not really informed and aware of what that domestic abuse dynamic looks like, it could actually have the opposite effect of being helpful, because you've got an abuser and their victim sitting there in that session, and that abuser still has the power and control. But also, therapy is supposed to be a safe space. And so when you put that couple in that dynamic, that is not going to be a safe space for that victim, because she's not free. They're not free to share, to confide anything, because when they leave that office, they then will have to deal with the repercussions of whatever they shared.
So like in couples therapy, the abuser could potentially weaponize that session against their victim. But what about when you're going individually? I guess, Anna Kendrick was talking about how she was begging her individual therapist, like, give me a mental health diagnosis so I know I am to blame and I can fix this. But, she wasn't.
Right. We see a lot of times with victims is that in that relationship, they have been made to feel like everything that's happening is their fault. So then when you're in therapy, you're approaching it like there must be something wrong with me. Like, I'm trying to figure out what is wrong with me that I have caused this to happen. But that's not true at all. What is happening is that abusive partner is making an active choice to cause harm, and the victim is a victim of that. But over time, through gaslighting and other manipulation tactics, they've been made to believe that it's their fault. Like, an abuser might say, well, if you just had dinner ready on time, then I wouldn't have done X, Y, Z. Or if you would have done this, I wouldn't have done that. And so then when you hear that, it's just like, what can I possibly grasp at to sort of justify to myself that I'm the problem, because that's what I've been made to believe. And so then, like Charity said, if you have a therapist that's not educated in domestic violence and what that dynamic looks like, then it can be easy for them to be like, oh yeah, there must be something wrong. When really the conversation needs to be, actually, no, this isn't your fault. This person has been causing harm to you, and let's process that.
Okay. My Harmony House, the podcast is called Voices Against Violence. And of course, if you need help, myharmonyhouse.org is a great website to check out, and they can lead you to the right direction. Thank you guys for being here.
Thank you.